I don't have a crystal ball, but I do have a front row seat to retail every day. So let's have a talk about what 2026 might look like. I'm Clare Bailey, the retail champion. And if you're listening, chances are you've survived another peak season, the sales are rolling, and the returns mountain is staring you in the face. Let's break it down. What's to watch? What matters? And how do we make sure you don't get left behind?
Yeah, retail reckoning. No space for dusty shelves. 'Cause retail reckoning owns the floor.
So I want to start with the big picture and the generalised trading environment. I mean, first up, 2026 is a year that retail has to stop waiting for certainty and start actually building momentum anyway. Winners won't be clinging on to the idea of that normal is coming back. There is no pre-COVID world ever again. They'll just have to act fast, act faster than the competition, and pivot with confidence. So I think two things are going to define the coming year: cautious confidence from the consumer side and valuing of values. If that makes any sense, I'll explain later. Shoppers are still watching their wallets, but they are definitely upgrading selectively, and it's the small luxuries, the memorable experiences, and often with brands that they trust. There's also the importance of convenience in terms of efficient and frictionless experiences, and the community. And convenience and community seem to be pretty much everything. If something isn't easy, or it isn't local, or it isn't enjoyable, it's going to be a struggle. So, yeah, the economic and behavioural shifts of the last few years haven't disappeared, but the trading environment that I predict for 2026 is one of selective spend, cautious consumers, and high expectations as well. Definitely no room for failure. Leading on from that, and as I do a lot of work with local authorities for things like high street support, I want to focus a little bit on the high street backdrop and what support is genuinely needed. Zooming into the high street, footfall is sort of stabilising, not everywhere, it's fair to say, but it's generally, as an overview, not looking as bad as it has been. Localism's really sticky. People are enjoying more going out in their local communities, it would appear. But vacancy rates of units are still a problem. I mean, the thing is, the high street, and it has been for a long time to be fair, it isn't pure retail anymore. It's much wider. Experiences, services, treats mixed together. I mean, we want the butcher, the baker, but also a bank and a delivery collection point, and possibly, if you're self-employed, as many more people are freelancing and self-employed these days, maybe a high street accountant, a solicitor. So everything has to be present, not just shopping. So all these places that are thriving in 2026 are giving people reason to leave the sofa, whether it be to get some important admin done, do the banking, go for a coffee with friends, have a blow dry, or meet up with the preschoolers at a play centre to let them run off steam. It's simply somewhere to get stuff done, or somewhere cosy to bump into friends or feel a bit pampered. It is very much more about feeling, though, than it is about buying stuff. Services are another really interesting area, but I think that's something that often gets forgotten when we talk about the high street. But the problem is, certainly from my experience, is that some councils and business improvement districts and so on are missing out on the basics. They need to provide clean, safe and accessible streets, well lit and so on, with sensible parking solutions and simplified licensing to allow businesses to trade and do what the local community want. The big infrastructure projects are great, but actually removing the barriers for traders, potentially providing practical learning that's delivered in a method by which they can adapt to their working hours and help to support them to also adapt to the changing trading environment, that's a quick win that really matters, and that can be delivered immediately. It isn't sort of 15 years in the planning and the fundraising. Some success stories that I've worked with include Sheffield City Council, and Gainsborough, which is part of West Lindsey District Council. And they've proven that through things like curated spaces, independent-led business ecosystems, and thoughtful investment, not clutter but coherence, and things that land quickly can help the high streets thrive. But what that needs is both the retailers and the local support to do it, potentially just with the facilitation from the organisations such as the councils and bids. So now I'm going to look at your strategy, because we've got the big picture and the high street context, the trading environment. So what do retailers actually need to do first? I would say in the first instance, do not overcomplicate matters. Obviously, your first priority is your range, your stock, and your margin protection. Without that, what have you got? You need to back your winning products, ditch the dead legs, and optimise your pricing. That goes without saying. Then service comes next. Staff who greet, smile. They can sell, but they give a consultative sell, whilst upselling confidently without being pushy. Then visibility. Google Business Profile Optimization, brilliant signage on the shop front, beautifully done windows. If you nail these 3 topics, you'll be in a strong place to build footfall and basket size. However, I'd put them in that order, because what you don't want to do is become visible, bring people in, only for them to discover that the range doesn't suit them, the pricing isn't aligned to their needs, and the service is rubbish. So get the core basics right first. The offer, range, product lifecycle management, stock management, margin protection, pricing and promotions before you even bother to invest in service. Because until you know your range, you can't train the staff on how to sell the product anyway. And obviously a lot of that then comes down to your in-store experience, the merchandising, the flow. And only when you feel ready to go to town and say, come and see us, we're awesome, should you focus on the visibility, because otherwise it can be a double-edged sword. The other thing, whilst talking strategy, a big mistake is waiting too long to see if a product performs when it's failing, discounting too early if a product hasn't met its full potential yet, chasing perhaps online strangers who engage with you on Facebook or your other social platforms, whilst potentially not paying true attention to your loyal locals, sinking money into flashy new technology over the basic service and sales training that help the team to actually deliver the customer experience that you would prefer your customers to experience when you're not present to deliver it yourself. And I believe that it's the small and consistent actions that compound to deliver results, loyalty, repeat visits, and increased basket size. Now, I've just mentioned loyalty. Let's look a little bit more in depth in loyalty. I think absolutely, and it always has been, that loyalty in 2026 is emotional. And people do tend to stick with brands that make them feel seen and solve their problems, deliver what they expect, and deliver consistently. I would say that the point schemes alone, that's old hat, saturated, dead in the water. What really works well when it comes to loyalty are frictionless perks, personalised offers, things like a birthday treat, gamification. If you think about Lidl, Spin the Wheel, McDonald's, Monopoly, they're all little moments of joy. They're easy, reassuring, and rewarding. And that's what people appreciate. Points almost feel like you're being held to ransom, whereas moments of joy make it a pleasure to go to a business. And one of the things that I feel is very important in 2026 is how ethics and sustainability tie into people's emotional connection to a business. We're seeing more and more of the repair market. I mean, I think about the repair shop, how popular that is on TV. The pre-loved upcycling type stuff. Rental models so that you can dip in and out of things like phone handsets and TVs and so on, back as it used to be in the 70s and 80s. And refill models, shops where you turn up with your own jar or container and can take home anything from bubble bath to lentils. All of those models are rising because customers seem to want to do the right thing. They do seem to want to be loyal to the brands that make it as easy as possible for them to do the right thing. The other thing to consider is how people are becoming increasingly mindful to things like packaging. So minimal, recyclable, biodegradable packaging matters too, as long as it obviously protects product integrity. And retailers who get all of this right in 2026 are going to win loyalty almost without trying. Another area where there's always a lot of noise and fear and the pace of change is extreme is around tech. Things like AI, smart EPOS systems, click and collect, email automation, electronic lockers for your click and collect. They're all really useful, but only if they save time or boost sales. I don't think any business has the time nor cash to adopt tech for just the hype. Now, there is one non-negotiable, and that's cybersecurity. Obviously, 2025 was a hell of a wake-up call because Rolls-Royce, M&S, Co-op, and others were all hit with massive cyber instances. And that created massive losses, reduction in profits, and an impact on trust. Retailers have got to really make sure that they've got very secure systems in order to protect the trust of customers who are arguably sharing a lot of their personal data, particularly for online transactions, and they don't want that compromised. But when it comes to tech as a whole, pick one thing and do it well, then expand. Because functional is always going to beat flashy. And tech should be there to free up your people to do what humans do best, which is connect, deliver a customer experience, sell, and troubleshoot. AI may well be useful to do things like seasonal planning or forecasting or stock profiling, but it's never going to replace a smile and a thank you card in a bag when a customer's spent with you. Speaking of people smiling, another key theme I feel is important is staffing and culture. Because staffing in 2026, especially if you take into account the last two budgets, is costing you more than ever before. So, having heard a very interesting talk a few years back from a senior director at Pret a Manger, he said, hire for attitude, everything else can be taught. So I think my take is go with this. Hire for attitude and experience, because experience does have huge value. But look for people who've got the humour, resilience and dedication that working in consumer-facing businesses across retail, hospitality, leisure, personal care, visitor economy, that's what they need. Then train for skill. Teams need 3 essential ingredients. They need to know how to actively sell without being pushy, active and ethically, let's say. They need digital confidence because they need to be able to interact with systems. And they need emotional intelligence. They need to be able to understand customers and potentially to diffuse tricky situations should they arise. Staff loyalty is emotional too, and there's huge turnover in the industry at the minute, and it's really difficult to employ people despite increasing salaries. People just feel like with what's going on with the way consumers are behaving, and actually the Retail Trust have been running a campaign in the back end of 2025 about how we should treat retail staff because the retail crime and the retail abuse had gone up to the point where nobody wanted to work there anymore. But staff loyalty is emotional. So if an employer is fair, communicates openly, has flexibility regarding shift patterns and offers quality career support, then that will lead to happy staff. It goes without saying that happy staff lead to happy customers. I guess it's simple maths. And a good culture is a retention tool and your competitive advantage. I want to look a little ahead again, a little bit of hope and perspective. I'm quite bullish about the value add of independence in our high streets, but also the importance of chains as anchors and a nice equilibrium between independence and chain retail and all the other service providers in a high street gives that overall service offering for a place that makes people want to go there. But see, the thing with independence is they can innovate much faster than chains because things don't have to go to decision by committee or go through finance approvals or anything else. If you're an owner-operator, you just decide. And you can create experiences that algorithms can't. And communities still want real places populated by the stalwarts of the high street alongside the really personal, innovative brands, whether that be retail, personal care, or visitor experience, hospitality. It's about knowing the customer and being able to have that hyper-local edge. Because as an independent, your hyper-local knowledge is gold dust. Knowing your customers because you've embedded yourself in the community, you probably live near to where you work. Chances are, if you've got kids, they go to school with the kids of some of your customers. And you can tell your story and be connected and be involved. And whilst the big players probably have deep pockets and can scale, head office make decisions. They don't live where the stores operate. They live in ivory towers. It's a little bit harsh, but it's not necessarily unfair. So the edge for independence is your hyperlocal knowledge. Use it. Recently, somebody asked me for a blog, how would you describe retail as a movie in 2026? So for a bit of fun, let's answer that. I was thinking it's an epic, like Lord of the Rings. Relentless, full of surprises and wrong turns. There's a few dragons along the way. Or maybe it's Mission Impossible. Plot twists, broken systems, miracles expected. But the one that I chose in the end for 2026? It's Jerry Maguire. You have to tear up the old playbook, rebuild loyalty and values. And yeah, the star's going to have to be Tom Cruise because in retail, we're all always doing our own stunts. One piece of advice I wish every retailer could potentially tattoo on their forearm. If it doesn't pay, it doesn't stay. Back to basics. Range, pricing, promotions, experience, loyalty, and good marketing. That is a survival kit. You don't need gimmicks. You just need to be good, and you just need to be better than the next best competition. So that's my take on retail trends for 2026. It's about the environment you're trading in, what to focus on, what to watch, and how to avoid getting left behind. If you'd like to talk about trading performance, margins, ranges, buying plans, pricing strategy, promotional calendars, what else, life cycle management or operational plans for 2026, please give me a shout. That's what we do with our clients day in, day out. And after all, we all know that planning for Christmas 2026 starts in January. I'm Clare Bailey, the Retail Champion, and this has been Retail Reckoning.